Hey folks, my name is Derek Brown. I'm a stand-up storyteller. I'm the brother from another planet. Strange people, y'all, think I'm strange. I think that what I experience is strange. And still I rise. I'm learning to be circumspect about disrespect, careful about how I respond to and handle disrespect. Let me show you something. Few people will admit to acts of racism, sexism, ageism, classism, dogmatism, or even absenteeism, favoritism, narcissism, nepotism, antagonism, cynicism, pessimism, nihilism. I actually built this ism dictionary years ago for a time such as this. When I made it, I had serious intentions to watch and document how each ism was present in our work environment and how they might create advantages or disadvantages for me. And as you can see, that never happened. I eventually identified definitions for more than 50 isms from the dictionary. Made my own little isms dictionary. An ism prism is what I call it. A prism analyzes light. Well, this ism prism analyzes isms. Not all of these isms are negative, right? Think activism, see? And witticism. They're in the dictionary. Not all are negative, but most are. Nowadays, I read this with a different purpose. I read it now to amuse, sober, and re-educate myself. See, I discovered by living long enough, I've discovered how pervasive these ism behaviors are. I then I learned how subtle they are and how crafty, microaggressive folks are at throwing rocks and then hiding their hand, then gaslighting you, then making you and others question your sanity while criticizing your sensitivity. I've also learned firsthand that microaggression is multicultural and multi-generational. All races, creeds, body types, heights, genders, and ages know how to play this game and play it well. So I'm learning how to recognize the isms and the perpetrators, especially me, then rely on my natural skills. See, my withdrawn, observant, reflective nature helps me to be quiet, not silent, quiet, introspective, precise, concise, and humorous in a witty, but sometimes blunt manner about what I might be experiencing, which makes me a little better than I used to be at handling these matters. Because I get a lot of practice handling these matters. Feel me on that one. So I'm not good at handling it by no means, but I'm getting better. We climb a step every day. I'm learning that being circumspect about disrespect comes down to handling me and increasing the level of self-control I can maintain when I'm going through. See, I'm fine on a good day when there's nothing going on, but I got to get better at controlling me when I'm up against it. That self-control will let me operate as a wit, right? And not as a weapon. Yeah? Believe me when I say that God has a sense of humor. So last week at church, one of the stronger young men in the small group I lead announced while he was sharing that he was experiencing subtle, acute racism at his school. I used to work in his school cluster more than 20 years ago, so I know of what he speaks. That touched off a passionate discussion, one where even our quieter group members shared their Me Too experiences. This discussion offered a great growth opportunity, which means it offered a greater threat. It's a threat. Now imagine the visual of a pastor walking by watching me lead a small group discussion at their church with young men on the carnal ills of racism and how we shall overcome. That can go off the rails into several rabbit trails. So we needed to stay on course. So the captain had to command the ship. I interjected and asked the group if we could table the discussion and promised that I would find a way to continue it later with some structure and some transparency and testimonial from me, with the focus being on embracing the opportunity for self-control more than trying to fight these obvious threats posed by casual, subtle, and overt disrespect that we may never eradicate from the face of this earth. We would discuss being circumspect about disrespect, being careful and prudent about how and what you respond to, and what the payoff might be, what the outcome might be, what it might not be. Hit me. After the small group session, I sought wise counsel from an elder and paid careful attention to what was shared and how it was shared. During that counsel, I saw the difficulty my elder has had with navigating this delicate path to self-control and saying what he needed to say about it and not saying what he didn't need to say. I saw it in his eyes. I heard it in his tone, even his speech patterns. Our conversation provided no answers, but I've learned that there really are no answers, right? They're only guided, iterative approaches that we improve as we grow. Right, let's move on. Now, my guidance comes from reflection on my experiences and my one true source of independent, timeless wisdom. See, I trust that these words that I read and revisit often during triumphs and challenges will always help me. They are the same words, but I am never the same person when I read them. I've been changed in my lifetime. I've been taught, trained, corrected, rebuked, and matured by experience, hope, healing, and these words. Let me show you something. Now, my first encounter with this truth taught me to confront fears and become more transparent in my relationships, which would help people see both my gifts and my stuff, right? My issues and challenges. Being seen, really seen, would help me confront my weaknesses, then strengthen both weaknesses and strengths by walking shoulder to shoulder, arm in arm with other strong, mighty men. Now, when all the ethereal smoke cleared from my pipe dream, though, that goal met with some triumphs and some challenges. Suffice it to say that a brother learned the hard way to be careful about transparency. Everybody does not need to know your stuff. I become much more discerning about who I show me to, the real me. And nowadays, that's not a lot of people, y'all. Now, in recent years, the studio and the way I've set it up has become the safest space I know outside of my wife and our daughter. It is a warm space that facilitates transparency, hope, healing, and change. See, my camera is right there, and I have a monitor right there that lets me see me while I record. Now, this one-man setup was designed over 10 years ago to help me overcome my fear of the camera and my frequent displeasure with the sound of my own voice and the fear of engaging my own countenance. Watching me write and speak through my challenges has become a powerful, cathartic experience. Y'all, it has helped me to see that I am me. See, reading, writing, and speaking are my greatest strengths. They are a 3-strand cord that is not easily broken. Writing is organized thought. Writing about my experiences requires me to focus on thinking through rather than just going through. Reading is interpreting organized thought. Reading about my own experiences helps me understand the nuances of human interaction and conflict. This helps me deal with what I feel, which helps me heal from what I feel. Speaking allows me to examine my own heart for its abundance. That's good, bad, happy, sad, and ugly generates my words. Feel me? Let's keep going. Anger is my constant companion. It was once my greatest enemy. I have accepted that it may always be with me. So I'm learning how to make it my friend. Several years ago, I read a book called Spiritual Leadership by J. Oswald Sanders. What I read helped me see anger in a different way, as a thermometer, more than as an albatross just hung around my neck, weighing me down. Anger is a leadership trait that can actually motivate strategic action and resolution if I do not become too angry. Now, too angry is so angry that I can't pray, think, learn, grow, and go. If I can't pray and think, then I'm too angry. And if I'm too angry, I need to stand down until I'm back in control of me. This is much easier to do now that I can recognize when I'm there. Where's there? Well, that's when my chili has completely warmed and is starting to percolate. Feel me? Let's keep going. Our building is filled with microaggressive adults and children. They combine to generate an exhausting daily drama that feeds on itself. And I am not one to give my energy to drama, but I admit that I succumb on many days and I pay too much attention to what is going on around me. Now, most days I navigate and survive by avoiding unnecessary adult and student interactions. I work at a school and I navigate and survive by avoiding unnecessary adult and student interactions. I'm careful about when I walk up and down hallways and what hallways I visit, when I go to the bathroom, what bathroom I go to, when I make copies. Now, I'm also intentional, though, about visiting other safe classrooms and leaving my classroom door open, which allows former students or kids who have never been in my class, but with whom I've built rapport, to easily visit, so I can check in and check on them. Handshakes, bear hugs, Snickers, fruit bars, and kind words go a long way towards generating a goodwill that combats this daily drama. This week, though, the drama reached a critical level, and it got to me. See, y'all, God has a sense of humor. Our former boss got investigated, right? He didn't really get investigated. It was a sham investigation from beginning to end on the basis of an anonymous complaint from one of my coworkers. The complaint was a bit dubious, a little shady. For my boss's errors of omission and commission. But my boss was basically exonerated and promoted because I don't think he ever wanted to be our boss. And now he doesn't have to be. He can be the boss of the group that he wanted to lead all along. Details of what I'm discussing here are beyond the scope of what I'm trying to accomplish today, but trust me, I understand the details well. So now we've got a new boss, and our new boss is a high conflict person who was kind of demoted. I'm thinking maybe the last place they wanted to be was in charge of our group. I had a conflict with our new high conflict boss not too long ago when they were not my boss. That resulted in them no longer speaking to me. The details there are beyond the scope of this discussion, but I understand them well. I've conferred with several other coworkers who have said, me too. Had that same experience with this high conflict individual. I have another coworker who lost his wife last week after a lengthy illness, and few of us knew what he had been going through, much less what his wife had been going through. And it hit us all hard because most of us have families and young children and would not want to think about what it's like to lose the partner that helps us raise our children, helps us build a healthy marriage. You don't want to even think about that. So our department's current vibe is a lot of sad a whole lot of mad, and a palpable air of distrust. Now, let me explain that. See, both my old and new bosses look like me. Let me say for the record, I'm embarrassed by both of them and their past actions. And I'm very doubtful about their future actions. I think my coworkers may feel similar sentiments, but may project them towards me just a smidge. Now, I don't know this for sure, but it feels like there might be some fact to my fiction, and that there might be some fiction to my fact. Isn't it always like that? During one of my recent morning journeys, right, a trusted coworker introduced me to 4 simple agreements that align quite well with lessons from my one true source of independent wisdom. The agreements are simple, but they're powerful. First agreement says, be good with your words. The second says, take nothing personally. The third says, don't make assumptions. The fourth says, do your best. Give maximum effort. Now I understand the nuances of these agreements. Honoring your words is not about counting them, though I do that sometimes. I'll get to that later. Rather, it's about making your words count, making them meaningful. Telling the truth with grace, so that you're not just being mean. Taking nothing personally does not mean to never feel attacked. Rather, it means to never act attacked. Never say ouch. Never let them see you sweat. Assuming nothing means never thinking you know why anything happened, or what they felt, or what they meant, what they knew, what they didn't know, who's right, who's wrong. Assume nothing. Now, doing your best is all about realizing that it's hard to always be good with your words, to take nothing personally, and to assume nothing, particularly in a microaggressive environment. It means you give yourself space, grace, and mercy to make and correct those mistakes. As long as mistakes are around, they're like the thorn in your side that reminds you that a greater power is needed to learn and grow and do better in these situations. And that's not the worst thing in the world to realize. Hit me. I mentioned earlier that even though it's more important to make words count, I do count my words sometimes. Moment of transparency, y'all. When I'm irritated, my stand-up storytelling can become stand-up surgery with no anesthesia, where I offer incisive, confrontational commentary more than prayer, grace, and mercy. I would love to tell you that these confrontations are to promote growth. I'm a peacemaker, not a peacekeeper, but that's not exactly true, man. When I get to that level, in my mind, I'm speaking directly to whatever level of devil is present in my atmosphere, and I'm commanding that devil to leave. These words often have the opposite effect, though. I'm offering these addresses a lot of times to audiences who do not listen well, if at all. So my words will at best be misunderstood. At worst, they are often misinterpreted and used against me. In short, I may be fueling and facilitating the folly itself. This is when I need to listen more than I talk. Segue. That's a good segue. In my time, I've served choice words to more than a few people. My words can penetrate souls and provoke a lot of reactions. This school year, though, those words have met some vigorous retorts from young people who, even when they might be strong in their wrong, will still double down on arguing and debating, talking back. I've also witnessed several students participate in my class while apparently under the influence of controlled substances, which you have to be circumspect about confronting as well, because the immediate retort is, "You have no proof." Trying to protect the safety of children, I'm not sure it's about proof at this point. Suspicion is okay. Even when no drugs are involved, those students are sometimes under the influence of arrogance and its cousin, ignorance. Aren't we all? These influences are easier to see, though, when I'm listening. I can't learn or discern when I'm talking. Segue. Sometimes you let that fool go. I'm paraphrasing this as I read it while I'm showing it to you. Sometimes, though, you let that fool know. I've been taught to confront gently and in private. However, I admit that I have sometimes chosen to gently confront microaggression in public so that there are witnesses, because doing so in private presented a threat to no witnesses. But guess what? I would likely take an L, a loss in these situations, either way it goes. I'm pretty sure that one such confrontation led to a lot of covert scrutiny from my former evaluating administrator because they were one of the witnesses. Now, even though that covert scrutiny might be one of the reasons why they're now my former evaluating administrator, in hindsight, those confrontations were not worth the scrutiny I experienced because of them. Not even close. Still, now I think the real lesson here is to count the cost of confrontation, even when you think it's necessary. On to the next one. Oh yeah. Now, I am not sure whether this requires confrontation or not. This is a joke shared by a coworker who offered it for a laugh at the end of a tough week. I'll give him that. But this fell flat. This fell flat. You gotta miss me with this one, y'all. The AI version of how Cardi B would write a test question. I can do without that. All this did, right, was advise me about this teacher and the one teacher who pushed the loved button on the email, and what this joke may reveal about their serious attitudes towards students of color. Next one. Yeah, children mimic adult microaggressions and boundary infringements and may not know any better. They simply may not know any better. I'm talking about the children and the adults. I'm sometimes more transparent with students than I should be, right? So this reminds me, keep my guard up when that trouble starts to come around. Next one. Yep. Now I remember this about myself and others. What is in you will come out of you. No two ways about it. Next one. When I really pay attention to my daily environment it is apparent that it lacks wisdom, maturity, and growth. That does not mean that our environment needs to receive that wisdom from me. I learned that the hard way every day. However, I'm always looking for opportunities to share contextual wisdom and hopefully one day the source of that wisdom. Thought that opportunity came this week through my version of a new addictive online game called Connections. You love Wordle, man, you'll love Connections. Millions of people already do. The goal of Connections is to group 16 terms into 4 named categories. Sometimes it's easier to group the terms than it is to name those categories. You don't have to name the categories though, in their version. In my version, you do. The other spin that I put on the game was, for this version, I'm taking 15 terms and grouping them into 5 categories of 3 terms each, because good things come in threes. Think Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Mo, Larry Curly, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. Feel me? Now, once we worked on this and I shared the key, this is a strategic key that allows me to offer some free commentary on each grouping, especially the one I lead off with, the mind, will, and emotions. I shared with my students that the Hebrew word for heart is leb, L-E-B, like brown, and that it means intersection of the mind, will, and emotions. The heart is the intersection of the mind, will, and emotions. That is why we must protect it, for out of it flows the springs of life, including the words that reveal our heart's contents. That's real. And I think my words were well received by some students, but perhaps not the student that I may have been talking to indirectly. I got a couple of motor mouths in my classes that say the wrong thing a lot. But I don't think they heard me. I think they heard me but decided to not listen. And still I rise, right? But maybe I don't need to be trying to influence that student, at least not in this way. Perhaps I should leave them to their own devices. After all, when the student is ready, the teacher will teach. So I'll live with what I've done. Think twice about it next time. Next one. Yeah, that one says, don't say ouch, and never let them see you sweat. Next one. Got a double play here now. Now the first one, telling a smart man, right, to conceal knowledge can lead you down a rabbit trail. So consider this interpretation instead, smart guys. Not everybody needs to know about your missteps and corrections. Not everybody. Not everybody needs to know your thoughts, viewpoints, and opinions either. Advice requires permission. Your wisdom does not necessarily make the world a better place, but sometimes you gotta let that fool know, right? I'm saying all of this to scream. The goal here is balance. Gotta have some balance. Now the second one here tells me to be diligent about addressing my own mess, because the cost of not doing so is being enslaved by your feelings that are generated by the actions of others. Now please understand that this is a worse fate than slavery itself. Folks who can push your buttons will always control you. They will control your responses and reactions to a point where you will give them control of your actions. Easier said than done, but it's got to be said and read. I'm getting ready to close. I've generated no answers today, folks. What I have done, though, is I have searched myself. I've let you watch. And I'm being guided by the lamp that lights my path. That's what I've done. Being circumspect about disrespect requires that I examine my own motives, then count the cost twice before I engage in any type of response, because there's only one person I have the power and capacity to do anything about, and that's me. And in the end, my goal is to always produce a better version of me than the one who walked the halls or avoided walking the halls last week. A version who is better able to respond to the pressures and ills of life with patience, grace, self-control, and a hunger to learn and grow. Now, this search of mine, along with some well-placed breaks and rest, I'm telling y'all, I get worn out every week. By about Thursday, I'm done. And it takes me all weekend to get myself back to a point where I can go and do it again in this pursuit of a stable retirement income. But I'll get there. I know what I need to do. I just have to do it. I trust and believe in the process. And I hope that sharing it with you gave you something concrete and meaningful, y'all. It's not about answers. This one's about a graceful, forgiving approach. Selah. Grace and peace. I'm out.